You just when I thought our chance had passed, you went and you saved the best for last. A classical, timeless selection there from Vanessa Williams. You know, that's the kind of music that only, special people. If you can appreciate Vanessa Williams, it means that on the inside you might be rough and tough looking on the outside, like my boy Ian Roberts. But on the inside, there's a softer, more compassionate side to you that appeals to human nature. A minute on to the hour of 11 o'clock in the morning time. It's a Southern classic. I want to say good morning to our viewers that have just joined us on GBN Television. That's Channel 7, Channel 11, and Channel 20. For those of you that's in cable, I want to say good morning also to those of you joining us via the World Wide Web at www.gbn.gd. For those of you on our social media platforms, that's Facebook and YouTube. Indeed, good morning and welcome to the televised edition of the Mid-Morning Buzz. Your boy JC here with you on a Thursday. My guest this morning, he's a project manager of the EBA project, that is, and it's a project, as among many, that is undertaken that falls under the scope of the operation of Gren Coda. And certainly, I want to say good morning to him. Good morning, Mr. Roberts. How are you?
Good morning, Joseph, and good morning to your listeners.
Indeed, it's a pleasure having you here on this wonderful Thursday morning.
Thank you.
Let's set the tone. As you said, we've heard sporadically. We've heard about the EBA project and different aspects of what you do. But even before we get into the EBA project, there's going to continue to be an ongoing conversation. Let us spend the next few minutes to speak about Gren Coda. Because if you remove Gren Coda, there is no EBA project. Well, maybe there might be an EBA project, but maybe under some other organization. But we can say there's no EBA project without Gren Coda. We've heard of Gren Coda for years, Ian. I mean,
yes.
And when I say years, I mean years.
Many years.
Many years. Who's Gren Coda? What do they do?
Well, Gren Coda is an NGO. It means NGO is a non-government organization. It is based in Guelph. It's been established since 1986 by some of the giants of that period.
Right.
And Gren Coda was set up initially to serve rural communities in the west coast of Grenada. Women in need and so forth. But Gren Coda has evolved to take on many other aspects of service to the community. Even the legal aid that is on St. John Street in St. George's is part of Gren Coda. We have many programs helping students with school fees and books and uniforms.
Yes.
We have programs where we help people with repairing their homes. We give hampers out at Christmas. We also help farmers to become more established. We give them water tanks, we help them with pumps, we help them with plants, we help them with animals, you name it. Whatever is needed in the community, Gren Coda is there.
And I'm happy that you said that, and I think it might be fair enough to say that Gren Coda is about transforming lives.
Absolutely.
Right, so it doesn't matter. And because you talked about the educational aspect, and the way you said it, I mean, for the unassuming listener or viewer, they might probably think that when you talk about helping with school, they're probably thinking that you're making a reference to just giving a child $20 to help them buy or giving them a cup of hot milk. But when you talk about what Gren Coda does, and I know for a fact, is that they become part of your life. It's Absolutely. A family, really and truly. I mean, and you must say while you're there, must say hats off and good morning to my dear, of course, she's part of the extended family, my dear mom, Judy Williams. I mean, the truth have
yes.
known. I mean,
she is a giant, yes.
And is in fact, I like the way you introduce her. In Jude, a giant of her time then, and even more so now. She's one of those pillars behind the scenes that nobody seems to meet very often. But I must say, hats off to her. She has changed the lives of so many individuals at so many different levels. And it's just remarkable. So Gren Coda is about changing lives, and part of that is going into the community, Ian.
Yes.
They get involved in the community and they undertake different programs. And one of the programs that's under their wings now is that of the EBA project. What is that project?
Well, EBA means ecosystem-based adaptation. And ecosystem is wherever you are. Everything that works together in the environment for you and with you is considered your ecosystem. And the ecosystem-based adaptation to climate change means we are trying to find natural solutions to some of the problems we're facing caused by climate change. And for instance, look at the weather. We're in a time where we can't tell if we're in rainy season, if we're in dry season. The weather has just changed, everything has changed. And we have sea level rise, we have the erosion of the coast, we have pollution through to modernization. We have all sorts of things that are affecting our very, very fragile community.
So I think in short, it is safe to say that the EBA project is about just teaching people to coexist and adapt, adjusting to your current circumstances.
Yes.
Because as it is. Go ahead.
The EBA strategies will show them how to adapt, but also to mitigate against future problems that you can have, because we don't want to wait until the problem is on your doorstep.
Right.
We want to think ahead, and through modernization, and we're in the information age now, we don't have to. We're past the days when we know a hurricane is coming tomorrow.
Right.
Okay? We know the cycles, we know what happens every year, and we're showing people how to prepare for all of these things.
And preparation is an essential component, even more so than the actual eventuality itself. I mean, because how prepared you are, what you've done to prepare, whether or not is at an individual level or at a community level, which is what the Grand Coda / EBA project seeks to do, getting people to adapt and getting the community to embrace what you are doing.
Well, yes, the community is everything, because without the community embracing and partnering with us, it doesn't make sense, because we're doing everything here for the community's sake, and if the community is not aware of how they will benefit, then it doesn't make sense. It must start first and foremost with the people. If it is not for the people, by the people, then there's no point in it. Yes.
As we talk about for the people, by the people, we were remiss of us if we don't highlight. That's a little throwback and highlight an exercise that took place last week, Friday, on the heels of our commemoration of the 40th anniversary of independence. And there, Grand Coda, together with the EBA project, I mean, you went leaps and bounds to execute what was an excellent program, which again involved the community. Share with us about that. How that went.
Grand Coda, like you mentioned earlier, have many programs and many projects. So although we were participating in that event, it was more than just the EBA project involved, because we had all of the Grand Coda team there, and they're working on many other projects. So it wouldn't be fair to say it's only the EBA project that was involved, but yes, the EBA project played a major role, because we're at that period in the project where we're on the finished stretch, we're on the last lap. We're in the final year of a 3-year project where we're bringing all of the ends together. So when we started the project 2 years ago, people didn't understand very much about the project. They couldn't see what we were doing. But now that we have touched the lives of so many people in the community of Wharf and Victoria, fishermen are involved. We can go to Victoria today and speak about Grand Coda, and everybody knows, well, this is the EBA project. You can speak to the fishermen. They all know what the EBA project is. They're all looking forward to the marine protected area that we're creating. So it's all coming together now. It's very tangible in the eyes of the people today.
And when you say working with the community, you really mean working with the community at different facets, be it the average man on the street, be it with the police, because that is also an integral part of building that community relationship and trust.
Yes. Yes, because the police plays a very important role in the community of Wharf and Victoria. Okay, the police station is right there in the middle of Wharf and the middle of Victoria, and everything we do, we partner with the police. Whenever we have a training, a meeting, whatever, we always invite the police, because when the police understand what the community is doing and they lend their support to the community can buy in a lot easier, because they're realizing that we're not operating in isolation.
Not operating in isolation. For those of you that are just joining us, welcome to the program, the televised edition of the Mid-Morning Buzz. My guest this morning, the project manager of the EBA project, Ecosystem-Based Adaptation, which, when put simply, a project that's intended to address the challenges that's posed by climate change, and teaching us how do we adapt and survive at the end of the day, and showing that after my generation and your generation and Ian's generation is long gone, that lives remain. So let's get into the EBA project, which you've highlighted, Ian. It's just one of the many projects that comes under the umbrella of Grand Coda and what it does. So we did say ecosystem-based adaptation. It's about impacting people's lives. Let's strip the jargons apart now, and let's get into the project. What are some of the things that you've done under the EBA project, which I know is vast, that seeks to address climate change and the mitigation, of course, its impact on the lives of people in Guelph and the neighboring communities?
Okay, well, first of all, we did of the area in the town of Guelph on the bay. For many, many years, garbage would wash down from the river. People would dump refrigerators, stove, oil engine, tires, what have you. And these things would impact the fishermen that use nets. They call them steam fishermen. So the steam fishermen spend money, get the net, and then the net could hook and drag and tear fish with a steam. Then they'd have to spend time repairing nets rather than fishing. Okay? So the garbage also attracted lionfish. And lionfish would destroy young fish. Lionfish eat 10 times their body weight.
They're very aggressive eaters.
And by cleaning up the area, we realized that the lionfish didn't like the clean environment. So many of the lionfish moved away. So fish are thriving, and the fishermen are catching more fish.
And I know we want to keep the conversation simple, but we must, Ian, ensure that people get the connection. Because we're hearing Guelph, we're hearing fish, but we need for people to appreciate the relationship with fishing and the community of Guelph. There is no separating the two, really and truly.
The livelihood of the families involved are all related to fishing. Because even though you might have a fisherman or fisher folk, as they call it, all right, his wife depends on him, his children depend on him. These are the same children that you see on the bus, okay? These are the same people that have to fix their roof. These are the same people that have to fix a retaining wall, that depend on the income from the fishermen. So when climate change affects fishermen, it affects the people on the land as well, because if their income is affected, okay, that means you can't buy the bus. That means you can't go to the hardware store, because that's where the income from a lot of these families come from. So by strengthening the ability for fishermen to have the full benefit of the livelihood, we have to take care of the problems that are caused. For instance, we also did an assessment of 3 of the major rivers in St. Mark and St. John. So we identified all of the pollution hotspots, all of the places where the river was blocked up since Hurricane Ivan. So if we have another flash flood, these areas would flood. So as part of the EBA project, we have identified these areas and we're cleaning it up. We're removing all of the trees that's been sitting there for decades. We're restoring the banks of the rivers where it was washed away because the water was diverted because of garbage. Okay, so we're putting plants that hold the banks of the natural solutions. We're putting plants that bind the soil so it prevents the erosion. And where stones were removed for construction, we're replacing those stones.
Let's go back to the cleanup campaign that you spoke of, and you highlighted the challenge posed by the ever-increasing presence of the lionfish. I'm not sure if folks will recognize that at one time, the first time I actually tasted and that conversation with lionfish came up almost a couple in recent times, but it was, and I can safely say it may in some cases, but be a real concern for folks in the fishing industry. Invasive lionfish threatens native fish and its environment. The invasive species are capable of causing extinction of native plants and animals, reducing biodiversity, competing with native organisms for limited resources, and altering habitat. Literally, if the lionfish, they were left without checks and balances, they literally, at the end of the day, they bring a halt. They eat every and anything in their path. And not just the fish, there's a coral reefs, there's everything else. Literally, if left unchecked, sooner rather than later, the way of life of people in Guam or in any other fishing community, but specifically Guam, it comes to an absolute halt.
Yes. Well, to add to what you just said, which is so correct, all right? If we have parrotfish that cleans the beach, we all love Granite's Beach, right? Mm-hmm. Do you know why Granite's Beach is so clean and beautiful by itself?
Tell me.
Parrotfish. The parrotfish, the blue fish that looks like a snapper, the blue and green, that's the parrotfish. Lionfish can destroy the parrotfish population. So when you think Granite's Beach is dirty, only because of pollution, Granite's Beach can become polluted in years if we destroy the parrotfish population. And lionfish destroys baby parrotfish.
That takes the conversation right back to where we started. We started where we hinted to the term ecosystem. And and maybe we should go back there so that persons get an appreciation of while ecosystems may operate, they may exist independently, there is a direct correlation to what happens in the sea and what happens to us on land. The mangroves, making sure that they are replanted. If left without checks and balances, then our ecosystem, our survival in Guam, Grenada, the Caribbean, the human race at the end of the day, we become null and void and non-existent.
Yes. Well, to give you an example, okay, the red mangrove, which is the front line of the mangrove. Okay, we have red, we have black, we have white mangrove. The red mangrove is the protector of the coastline. You know, on the west coast, on the east coast of Grenada, we have projects. Okay,
right.
We have communities that's been washed away. If we had red mangrove, that could not happen. If we remove red mangrove, and I hope our government is listening, educate itself on the value of red mangrove. Grenada here today because of the red mangrove that grow on the coastline. If you look at a map of Grenada on Google and you look at Wester Hall and Lansapine, and you can literally see the curvature of the island in those areas. Do you know what caused those curvatures? The removal of mangrove. All right. It may not happen in our generation, but it's very selfish to not think of future generations, okay? Because if we have to have prosperity for Grenadians, we must think of the future to create the opportunities for future generations, okay? So we have to think of the environment in terms of a 50 and 100-year plan. We cannot think of development in Grenada as a 5-year plan, okay? That is just short-sighted. We can restore red mangrove where it has been removed and still have sensible development and attract people to see our beautiful country. But if we have politicians that encourage, I have videotapes that I will share with you of people removing sand. And when I ask them, how could you be removing sand? They'll say, well, we have permission. I say, permission from who? Well, I'll let you fill in the blanks, okay? And when we have, so we are doing an ecosystem-based adaptation project where we're teaching people to preserve and protect while some of the same people are removing sand. They're removing the stones, all right, along the wall in Guelph. When you enter Guelph, you see piles of stones that they'll pick up. Well, you wonder why the water does crash so hard. I was speaking to the police in Guelph just recently, and she was saying, Mr. Roberts, when the wave crashed against the building, it just frightened me so much how it just feel like if the building will explode. And I'd say, well, you know, this is because people keep removing the sand. You see, if we do not have a strategic approach to our environment, we will lose it. And this is why we need a marine protected area.
You talk about a strategic plan, Ian, and yes, while organizations as yourself and EBA that you're responsible for, but it cannot be done alone. Would you agree that it takes an all-inclusive approach, encompassing approach, where communities, small communities gets involved, but even more so, politicians, and when I say politicians, we're not talking about no political organization, politicians, they understand that they too have a responsibility to this process.
Of course, because the policies are written by politicians, okay? Politicians have a lot of leverage, okay? They're in the eyes and ears of the population. When they speak, they have the authority to make these policies. So if we can have policies that and protect and restore our communities, okay? It is not just a matter of doing, it's a matter of thinking. It is a way of thinking. We're looking to have a new way of thinking because we cannot police the community. But if we arm the community with the information, they will do the protecting and the policing themselves.
Right. And happy that you said that, because even what you do, we touch fishing, but I know as the EBA projects, that the whole conversation about ecosystem adaptation and mitigation even extends to agriculture. And very often again, the conversation almost comes up as to whether or not politicians, they really understand. Sometimes you make you wonder, are they just doing it just for the sake of getting a feather in their cap? all right, or whether or not they do things just, I don't know, myopically again, may possibly.
Well,
with the use of fertilizers in particular.
I'm not in the business of blaming politicians, and I'll tell you why. I believe that all of the politicians mean well. I believe they're all trying their best because I work with them. Okay, right. I work with Al Labrio very closely. I have meetings with Minister Cohen in St. Mark. We had meetings with the Minister of Fisheries, Ms. Bain. Okay, I know Minister Steele very well. He's a cousin of mine. I know Peter David very well. He's, for my whole life, I thought Peter was my cousin. Okay, because our fathers were so close. All right, so I know these people. Even Dr. Mitchell and I have family members in common. Okay, so I know these people, and they are all good people. They all mean well. They all try their best in what they were given. But I think the system was not designed for them to succeed. Because we have a hand-me-down system since colonialism. And it's like fixing up an old bus, okay? No matter how you fix up the bus, it's still an old bus. We're in the age of electric vehicles. We need a new system. We have to adapt to what the information age has presented us. And right now, people can go online and get information. They don't need a politician to tell you what is best anymore. Right. Okay? Politicians are learning this stuff, but we need to engage the people in the community to understand that information is at your fingertips, and you can take these steps yourself. We have 50 times the information that we had just decades ago. But if our politicians, past, present, and future, can understand the role that technology plays, we can give people the opportunity to engage with more results. Politicians control the policies. Okay? So if we can meet and adjust some of these policies, so that we can remove some of the obstacles, remove some of the barriers. For instance, we are in the process of doing the riparian zone assessment, which is the banks of the rivers. We did the hotspot assessment, now we're doing the rivers, the banks itself, okay? Mm-hmm. We are finding pollution caused by fertilizer. The artificial fertilizer that many of the farmers are using is not just bad for the soil, but the runoff, because we have a small island. It doesn't take a lot of rain, and this stuff ends up right where the fish is, you see? And it affects the habitat of the fish, so it affects the livelihood of the community, and it's that whole cycle, that ecosystem. So we have to be aware that yes, we want to do farming, and yes, we want the crops to be big and pretty, but we could adapt to use the natural fertilizer instead. We have a lot of cattle and goats and sheep. Fertilizer is just as good, but it doesn't have the same impact on the rivers. When was the last time you see crayfish? Do you know that if you go through a river right now and almost never see crayfish? Do you know why we don't see crayfish as we did before? Fertilizer. Okay, and I know our politicians mean well when they give out fertilizer.
Right.
But please, for heaven's sakes, we're trying to teach one side of the island how not to use fertilizer, while we're doing the right thing by giving them the artificial fertilizer instead.
And as you said, Ian, just that nobody thinks we are there knocking anybody. The intention, it is done with a good intention, but at the end of the day, sure, intentions alone doesn't solve our problem.
It doesn't, but I believe also that the resources that we have, the resources that we have in Grenada, is very limited, and it is not the fault of government. It is a fault of the system. The system, we have a hand-me-down system since colonialism and slavery. Our system was never designed for our prosperity,
So how do we change that then? Because you're saying that, and I'm seeing, like you opened up a whole Pandora's box. If you said it was not designed for our prosperity, it was not designed for us to improve who we are, our knowledge. Improving our knowledge changes the way that we think. Changing the way that we think changes how we behave. Changing our behavior changes everything, and it goes right back to our survival as a people. How do we fix that?
Well, I'll give you an example. You're familiar with Black Wall Street. It's a community that was burned to the ground, I think, in the early 1900s, 1921. Okay? When a community is given the chance to produce their own economy, they do very well. They become very successful. They start businesses. The community become abundant. If we look at Petit Martinique, do you know that Petit Martinique has the highest per capita income in Grenada? Because nearly every family in Petit Martinique either have a boat, have a shop, they're working on the boats with the family. Everybody in Petit Martinique there's almost zero unemployment in Petit Martinique, okay? Because that's part of Grenada was designed for entrepreneurship. That's normal. If you go to Caracas, just look, it is, and these are all fishermen. These are fishing communities. Okay, you go to Caracas and you see the hotels, all locally owned. You see hardware stores, all locally owned. True. In the town in Hillsborough. Correct. Okay, and these are fisher folk. You see, but because the system, even though it's Grenada, okay, they have a system that promotes entrepreneurship, and if we can scale up in Guave and Victoria, and fishermen become more prosperous, these are the same people that would own the hardware stores. These are the same people that own the bakery. These are the same people that own the fruit stands, the restaurants, the supermarket, what have you. And this is where it all comes from.
Building communities. And I guess that's where it goes back to the heart of what Gren Coda and the EBA project is looking to achieve. And you would agree, Ian, that building our communities, transforming our lives, goes beyond just providing individuals with book knowledge. It takes an appreciation for how do I then take that which I've learned and use that to change, to create a new change. Because we seem to be in an environment where we have more individuals, young people, that's attaining tertiary level education. Years ago, if a guy said he had a master's or he had a bachelor's, people were like, he was far and few. But now, okay, everybody's got one. But they have the knowledge. But the question is, how do you empower your lives? Yourself with the knowledge that you have attained. That's where you turn the corner. And
well, the CO in Gren Coda, GREN means Grenada, CO means community, and DA means development agency. So it's a community development agency in Grenada. That's what Gren Coda means, okay? We start by giving people a vision of ability. When people can engage in what's possible, people have themselves.
Right.
When they can, fishermen, the tuna boats that you see on the Carnage, all tuna boats on the Carnage. I remember during the period of the revolution, we had maybe 8-10 boats like that, and that was it. Now we have more than 100. Okay? So it happened because someone saw the vision. They saw what was possible. And they did it on their own. this is what we're encouraging in the EBA project. Okay, we're not just fixing wrong, but we're educating people. We have several workshops with many members involved in the area where we're not just showing you how to fix the problem, but we're showing you how to have a vision so that the foundation that we are providing.
We're keeping our eyes on the clock, 25 minutes onto the hour in the morning time. Ian Robertson, he is a project manager for the EBA, Ecosystem-Based Adaptation, a project that falls under the auspices of Grand Coda, the Grenada Community Development Organization Agency. And certainly, Ian, we want to wrap in the next few minutes, but certainly, if we can take anything away from this conversation, this will be part of an ongoing series. What is that one thing you would want to leave with our viewing and listening audience?
I would like the audience to understand what a marine protected area is and how it benefits you. And this is what everyone lives somewhere. So, digging up the road in front of your house, you would be concerned. If you live in a fishing village, that road is the coastline. That's where you need to be living.
Right.
It is perfect that we have an appreciation for our coastline everywhere in Grenada, so that anything that impacts us as a community, we have a say in the matter. And an MPA, Marine Protected Area, gives the community that voice so that we work with government to protect people on the road.
I can easily see, Ian, the individuals who probably they do not live on the coastal front. They probably live most inland. And while Grenada, yes, we're relatively small, but some people, the life and culture of Guelph and communities that's on the waterfront is not the same as me in Springs, right?
Sure.
But if you can fashion it to, imagine you going home, you go home in the evening, Ian, and you have your regular spot, your parking spot, whether it's in your yard or by the side of the road, which we were talking about this morning, which is illegal, quite interested. But that's where you park. The neighbors know you park there. But somebody decide they're visiting and they decide now to pack up in your space. Think about the inconvenience it causes you. And liken now the coastal area, the folks, the people in the area of Guelph, when that space that's dear to them, because it's part of the economic livelihood, it becomes contaminated. It becomes invaded by foreign elements, whether it's the fertilizers or the chemicals we use in our homes. It impacts us. So at the end of the day, you're living in an interior, but you need to buy fish because you want to live a healthier life. But the fish that the fisherman is catching is contaminated because of your own actions or inactions. People need to start putting it together.
We have a great opportunity here with the EBA project by educating people about the chemicals in household cleaners. Okay,
right.
This is the long-term opportunity. It now tells us that we can have naturally derived household products that we can use here in Grenada. As an industry, we do not have to rely on harsh chemicals. We have that we can develop like a we're in the information age. We have now. We do not have to we wouldn't solve the problem next month. We have people that are making food. They're making clothes, they're making lotions, they're making toothpaste. These operations are. And because we're in the information age, we have access have pushed on the head briefing. We have what, 500,000? That's 5 times the
Right.
We can have that alone. Come on. Locally made, naturally derived household. You can sell it. You can sell it. I mean, the possibilities are endless. But the system is designed for Grenadians to be prosperous. Then policy will do that.
Indeed, it takes a change of policies. Once the policy is then instituted, it takes a change of behavior, and certainly us appreciating the policies and what the policies are seeking to achieve. Ian Roberts, project manager of the EBA project, which falls under the auspices of Grant Coda. Certainly, Ian, we've started the conversation, and we are going to continue it. And we certainly hope that the idea at the end of the day, we can change, usher in an era of change by understanding what we do, our actions or inaction, how it affects and the effects it creates on our way of life. Thank you, Ian.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Joe.
22 minutes on to the hour of 11 o'clock, of 12 o'clock in the morning time. Remind you that the Luncheon Edition comes up at the top of the hour. It's a production of our News and Current Affairs Department. Well, for those of you that's in television, this is where I leave you for now on social media. That's television, the viewing social media element, though. That's where I leave you for now. For those of you that's in television, I will continue with you. Just give you some really, 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 really great music for your listening selection, listening pleasure as we inch closer to the top of the hour. That's 12.